The biggest betrayal in my life didn't come from a stranger. It came from the two people I trusted most. The morning I saw a single text message on my husband's phone, I had no idea it would destroy my marriage, expose my mother-in-law's lies, and change my life forever. My name is Linda Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Seattle, Washington. For years, I believed I had built the perfect life. I had a successful career as a financial consultant, a beautiful home, and a husband I thought I could trust with everything. My husband, James Carter, worked as a real estate agent. He was charming, confident, and always knew exactly what to say. His mother, Jennifer Carter, never openly argued with me, but deep down I always felt she had never truly accepted me as part of the family. Whenever I tried to get close to her, she would smile politely, then find a way to remind me that no woman would ever be good enough for her son. James always brushed it off. "That's just Mom," he would say. "Don't take it personally." So I didn't. Until everything changed. One Sunday afternoon, Jennifer stopped by our house carrying a fresh homemade apple pie. "James, sweetheart, I made your favorite," she said with a warm smile. She barely looked at me before walking into the kitchen as if she owned the place. During dinner, I noticed something strange. Every few minutes, James and Jennifer exchanged quick glances. Whenever I asked a question, they changed the subject almost immediately. It felt rehearsed. Later that night, James left his phone on the kitchen counter while he went upstairs to take a shower. His phone buzzed 3 times. I wasn't the kind of wife who checked her husband's phone, but the screen lit up. One message caught my attention. "Jennifer, just a few more days. Linda can't suspect anything until the paperwork is finished." My heart skipped a beat. What paperwork? I put the phone exactly where I found it before James came back downstairs. That night, I barely slept. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like my husband was hiding something from me. Over the next few days, I quietly started paying attention. James claimed he was meeting clients, but twice I saw him leave his office early. Curious, I followed him from a distance. He drove to a small cafe downtown. Jennifer was already waiting inside. The two of them spread several folders across the table and talked for nearly an hour. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their serious expressions told me one thing. This wasn't an ordinary family conversation. That evening, James came home acting unusually cheerful. "I've been thinking," he said casually. "We should refinance the house. It'll make things easier financially." I frowned. "We're doing just fine. Why would we need to refinance?" He smiled without hesitation. "It's just paperwork, Linda. Trust me." Trust me. Those 2 words had always made me feel safe. This time, they made me feel afraid. The next morning, I made a decision. From that moment on, I wouldn't sign a single document without reading every word. I had no idea that decision was about to save my future. Just as I poured my first cup of coffee, the doorbell rang. A courier handed me a large legal envelope with my name printed across the front. Linda Carter. My hands began to shake as I opened it. The first page inside made the color drain from my face. Someone had been making plans behind my back, and whatever James and Jennifer were hiding, it had already begun. My hands trembled as I pulled the documents out of the envelope. The first page looked like a standard property transfer agreement. The second page made my stomach drop. It showed that ownership of my dream home had already been transferred. According to the paperwork, I had signed every document. I stared at the signature for several seconds. It looked almost identical to mine. Almost. "I never signed this," I whispered. Within an hour, I was sitting across from my attorney, David Brooks, in his downtown Seattle office. David studied every page carefully before looking up. "Linda," he said, "these signatures appear to be forged. If we can prove that in court, whoever created these documents is in serious legal trouble." My heart sank. There was only one question I couldn't stop asking myself. Was James really capable of doing this? Instead of confronting him, I decided to stay quiet. If James believed I knew nothing, he would eventually make another mistake. For the next several days, I acted exactly the same. I laughed at dinner, I asked about his work, I even thanked Jennifer for stopping by with another homemade dessert. Neither of them suspected a thing. Meanwhile, David began digging deeper. A week later, he called me. "You need to come to my office immediately." When I arrived, he slid several bank statements across the desk. "The money from the property sale didn't disappear," he explained. "It was divided." I looked closer. A large wire transfer had gone directly into Jennifer Carter's personal account. The remaining funds had been invested into a brand new real estate company, owned by James Carter. I felt physically sick. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was a carefully planned betrayal. That evening, I followed James again. He drove to the same cafe. Jennifer was already waiting for him. This time, I walked inside, sat at a table behind them, and quietly started recording the conversation on my phone. Jennifer leaned forward. "We're almost done," she whispered. "In another week, Linda won't have anything left." James laughed. "She still thinks I love her. She's never going to figure out what we did." Every word felt like a knife, but I didn't cry. I simply stopped the recording and slipped my phone back into my purse. Now I finally had proof. Later that night, David called again. "I found something else." "What is it?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Linda, this wasn't just about the house." "What do you mean?" "For nearly 3 years, James and Jennifer have been creating fake financial records, fake authorizations, and legal paperwork. Their goal wasn't just to steal your home." He paused. "They were trying to take everything you own." Silence filled the room. For months, I had blamed myself for feeling uneasy. Now I understood why. My instincts had been right all along. I looked out the window as the Seattle rain poured onto the empty streets. Then I made a promise to myself. I won't let them take another piece of my life. What James and Jennifer didn't realize was that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Because I was finally done trusting them, and I was ready to fight back. The next morning, I met David Brooks before sunrise. He spread every piece of evidence across the conference table: the forged documents, bank records, financial transfers, and the audio recording from the cafe. "This is enough to file a lawsuit," David said confidently, "but we have to do it the right way." I nodded. I've spent years trusting them. Now they'll have to face the truth. A few weeks later, the courtroom in downtown Seattle was filled with attorneys, witnesses, and reporters. Across the room sat James Carter and Jennifer Carter. They looked calm, almost confident. James glanced at me with the same fake smile I had believed for years. For a brief moment, I wondered if he thought I would still forgive him. He couldn't have been more wrong. When the hearing began, David carefully presented every document. The forensic handwriting expert testified that my signature on the property papers had been forged. Next came the financial records. The money from the sale of my home had been transferred directly into Jennifer's account before the remaining balance was invested in James's new real estate company. James's attorney tried to argue that everything had been done with my permission. Then David stood up one last time. "Your Honor," he said, "there is one final piece of evidence." The courtroom became completely silent. He pressed play. James's voice echoed through the speakers. "Linda still believes I love her. She'll never figure out what we did." Then Jennifer's voice followed. "In a few more days, everything she owns will belong to us." No one spoke. The silence in the courtroom was louder than any argument. The judge slowly removed his glasses and looked directly at James. "Do you deny making these statements?" James opened his mouth, but not words came out. Jennifer lowered her head. For the first time, neither of them had an excuse. Several days later, the judge delivered a final ruling. Every fraudulent document was declared invalid. Ownership of my home was immediately restored. The court ordered James and Jennifer to repay the stolen money, cover all legal costs, and face criminal charges related to fraud and forgery. When we walked outside the courthouse, James rushed toward me. "Linda, please," he said. "I made a terrible mistake. We can fix this." I looked him in the eyes for the last time. "A mistake happens once," I replied quietly. "You lied to me every single day. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice." Without another word, I walked away. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. I expanded my financial consulting business and created a nonprofit organization that helped women recognize financial abuse and protect themselves from fraud. One afternoon, during an interview, a reporter asked, "After everything you've been through, what's the biggest lesson you've learned?" I smiled before answering. "The people who betray you may steal your money, your home, or your time, but they only steal your future if you let them." As I left my new office that evening, I looked up at the Seattle skyline. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about everything I had lost. I was thinking about everything I had finally regained. My home, my confidence, my freedom, and most importantly, myself.